Bibles, please, and go ahead and turn, if you would, begin at 2 Chronicles chapter 18. 2 Chronicles chapter 18, if you would, please. And we're talking tonight about all the way. 2 Chronicles chapter 18 to start with, okay? Now, what we're going to do this evening is talk about, this is the second king that we're talking about in the southern kingdom, but you have on your reference, in your outline, a note about 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 27. So let's look at that just for a second. You're in 2 Chronicles, but go ahead and turn. This is a very important verse, a verse that you should be in your mind and on your radar as one of those verses you keep in mind just to help you stay where you need to stay and do what you need to do, because it is very powerful. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 27. What's happening here is Paul is talking about his ministry for Christ and how to reach the lost, and his ministry in general, and the use of the ministry God's given to him, his apostleship, and all throughout chapter 9. But then he ends in verse 27. After establishing his apostleship and his sacrifice, he says, "But I keep under my body and bring it into subjection." And the word subjection actually means black and blue. It means I really bring my body under extreme stress, lest that by any means, when I preach to others, I myself should be a castaway. So he acknowledges the fact that even though he has this position in this ministry, he's actually serving God, he was always conscious of the availability of making himself unusable to God. You see, it doesn't matter how much we do for God, because there's not like a big scale up in heaven, like where we want to get to a certain number and then we're covered. It's not that going on. But what there is going on is this. I was asked today, somebody said, how do you square the fact that he removes all of my sin as far as from the east and the west, he doesn't remember it, and the fact that we are judged, reference to the message we gave last week, for our sins as believers. We're judged, and our lives are judged as believers. And I made the point that, well, we are free from our sins. We are never judged judicially. That God has forgiven me of all of my sins, and so the idea of my guilt before God is removed. The judgment I face as a believer has to do not with my judicial relationship with God, not my eternal destiny, but my usefulness to God. It is a judgment or an assessment of usefulness to God. Because somehow the Bible teaches, and it's not clear about this, how this all works. So I can't tell you how it works, because the Bible doesn't tell us how it works. But there's some connection between our faithfulness here on earth and our responsibility in heaven in eternity. There is a connection between the two. How that connection all plays out, to anybody to try to define it and explain it in great detail, is actually an exercise in make-believe. We don't know how it works out. But there is a connection that God is going to judge us to see because only what we've done for Christ is going to last. Okay? And that's why the whole reference we talked about Sunday about having our works will be judged by fire, and only what's left after the fire will be acceptable to God. Now, in that context, what Paul is saying in 1 Corinthians 9:27 is we have to be always vigilant, because even though while we know we all deal with sin, now there are two references you might want to write down. Let me give these to you. We won't turn to them because of time. But 1 John chapter 1, verses 7 through 9, talk about, very important passage, about the reality of sin in the life of the believer and the need for a believer to confess his sin or to confess her sin. Remember this, that Christians do not confess their sin because they're asking for forgiveness. And many times we'll say it that way. I understand that. We'll say, Lord, would you please forgive me for saying that, or forgive me for doing that? Okay? And what we should be meaning, now we may be using that phrase and meaning this, but what we need to understand is this: when I sin as a Christian, I'm not coming to God to get forgiveness. Now, why is that? Do what? Very right. This is the timeline of my life right here. That's when I'm born. That's when I'm died. If I'm saved right here, all of my sins I've ever committed will be forgiven, and any sin I ever will commit will be forgiven at that very moment. Because when I am saved completely. And I am saved eternally. And I am saved securely. Then you say, well, why do Christians say, Lord, forgive me for my sin? What they should be meaning, if they're biblical in their approach, is they're saying, Lord, I agree with you that this is wrong in my life. This should not be here. I want to remove it from my life and move forward away from it. The same same objective that every parent has when Junior or Juniorette, the little boy, little girl, whatever, when they don't do right, their relationship to you as a child is never in jeopardy. You don't say, well, if you do that again, you're going to no longer be my child. No. But you apply discipline. Why? So that they will, because discipline, chastisement like that, is designed to remove the sin and displace it with righteousness. All right? So, understand that we all have that sin. But also you need to understand this. Let me give you this reference. Romans chapter 7, verses 14 to 25. Romans 7, verses 14 to 25 tells us that Paul acknowledges the struggle he had with sin. Can I ask you a question? Do you know any Christian who does not struggle with sin? That's alive. How many Christians are there that are alive that do not have to struggle with sin? How many? None. None of them. We're all in the same boat. And sometimes we miss that. We miss that because there is a propriety to letting everybody know what's going on in your life. We talked about this the other day, or maybe it was last week at the conference I made this comment. The fact that being truthful in my communication, which I always should be truthful, does not mean that I am exhaustive in all my communications. I don't tell everybody everything. Not everything's everybody's business, right? That's true. But we have to be careful that we don't forget the fact that believers struggle. But here's the reality about sin. Let me ask you a question. Is all sin created equal? Sin is sin, all right? Well, sin is sin, okay? All sin is the same in the fact that it's sin. Let me ask you a question. Is all sin the same as far as its impact or consequences? No, they're not, okay? You have wrong thoughts is different than having a wrong deed, okay? Okay? And you have to remember also, and I think some Christians struggle with this, they struggle with the fact that they confuse being tempted with being guilty. And there's a difference, okay? You ever wake up middle of the night or first thing in the morning and you had just a really not nice dream and maybe some thought, whatever it could be, is just there, okay? Or you're channel surfing, not looking for the wrong stuff, but you're just channel surfing or whatever, or you're Googling something with all the right intentions and then something comes up that you weren't looking for, it just there. And so at that moment there is a temptation, okay? So man, I'm a sorry person because I'm being tempted. No, you're a human being because you were tempted. The question is, how do you respond to it, okay? So when I talk about going all the way with God, I want to be realistic here, okay? I don't want to be like, and Coach Strickland, a very fine man, I'm sure, and I'm sure he's a good coach. I don't know anything about it. We didn't have a one hardly, but anyhow, maybe, I don't think it was actually him, okay? When you lose 76-0, it's not, I don't know if that's actually the coach's fault. Maybe he has no talent to work with. Okay, so, and that's not a basketball score, it's a football score. And, but every time the coach drew the play on the board, we always scored in the offensive play. And when he drew all the defensive plays, we stopped them cold in their tracks. But there was a breakdown. If we had taken the whiteboard out on the field, we would have won every time. But there's a breakdown in it. And one of the challenges of coaching is trying to get people to not be so discouraged they just give up, okay? Now, what I want to challenge you about is this. I don't want to make you feel good about any sin or whatever, but you shouldn't. But you have to understand the challenge is there, okay? But you also have to realize that there are some things that if you do them, the consequences are more significant. So everybody does wrong, and people sometimes use it as an excuse for their particular sin. But though all sin is sin, there's not venial sin and mortal sin. All sin is different in its impact, okay? Now, with that in mind, and that's sort of that background, that atmosphere of our thinking, okay? Let's now go to our text, our beginning of our text in 2 Chronicles. Now, what we'll find here is this king, Jehoshaphat. Let's just give you some facts about him, okay, so we can get him on the table here, know who we're talking about, okay? So he's the fourth king of Judah, okay? If he's the fourth king of Judah, how many kings were there before him? No, three, okay? And who was the king before the first of those three? Who was the king of Israel? Who? No. Who was the king before the first of the three? Okay, all right. Time out. Let's a little trick. Take your paper out. I'm going to give you a quiz, okay? Do what? Okay, well, no, okay. So okay, right. So you have Jehoshaphat, and you have three kings before him, okay? Who was the king before that first one? Yeah, Saul. No, not Saul. No? There's only one more left. It wasn't David. It wasn't Saul. Who was it? Solomon, thank you. Okay, Solomon. Okay, thank you. Okay, there was Solomon. Okay, Solomon was the last one of the United Kingdom. That's the United Kingdom, right? Solomon, got that? All right, that's okay. That's like when I asked, and then we won't go there. Okay, all right. So that's the thing. So you have these four. Let's move on because you got sidetracked. Okay, the king Asa is his father. Okay, and he reigned for 35 years. His father reigned for I think 41 or 42 years. He reigns for 35 years. Now he did some interesting things. Okay. He really did. If you look at 2 Chronicles, you're in 2 Chronicles, well, look at 17, okay? Look at 17, okay? Chapter 17, 2 Chronicles 17. And Jehoshaphat, his son, reigned in his stead and strengthened himself against Israel. Now, who is Israel? Who is Israel? The what? The what? No, Israel is the northern kingdom. Judah is the southern kingdom. Israel is the northern kingdom. Now, Israel sometimes refers to the whole kingdom, and sometimes Judah can be used to refer to the whole kingdom, I think, but not primarily. But that's Israel, okay? So he strengthened. Now, why would he strengthen himself against Israel? Why is he worried about Israel? Are Israel and Judah friends? They're related. They're family. Can I ask you a question? Have you ever known families that weren't on speaking terms with each other? They're not yours. Nobody in your family would do that. All your family love each other, and love just oozes out of every time your family gets together, and your family is close, just like Mutt and Jeff or whatever. I'm not sure what Mutt and Jeff is, so I hope it's okay. But okay, so, all right. But there are families, are there not? Where there's distance. And this family is this is the Hadwells and the McCoys here, okay? You have Judah, and you have Israel, and there's a division, okay? All right, so watch this. He strengthens him, and then he seeks the Lord, okay? He does. And he goes down, and at verse 3, and the Lord was with Jehoshaphat because he walked in the first ways of his father David. Verse 4, and he sought the Lord. So this guy's got some good stuff. He's like 2 or 3 thumbs up, even with one hand. I mean, he's doing some good stuff, okay? He unites the kingdom, okay? He unites, look at verse 6, and his heart was lifted up in the ways of the Lord. Moreover, he took away all the high places, and that wasn't the verse I wanted, okay? Verse 5, okay? Verse 5. Therefore the Lord established the king in his hand, and all Judah brought to Jehoshaphat presents, and he had riches. So there's a unity in the kingdom, okay? There's no partisan divide here. There's unity in the kingdom. And then he removes a lot of the false worship places. That's verse 6, okay? And then in verses 7 to 9, he has the scripture taught. He makes a point of having the Old Testament scripture taught in Judah and to be magnified with the people. So the bottom line is he's doing some pretty cool things. And in fact, in 2 Chronicles chapter 20, God really comes to his defense in a magnificent way. But there are some challenges, and I think his challenges are challenges you and I can face sometimes. So I want to pick out these 3 challenges for us to think about, okay, when it comes to going all the way. The first one is all the way in alliances, okay? Where he struggled was with his alliances. Now look at verse 18, okay? Now remember in chapter 17, he has strengthened his defense. He would be an example of how peace through strength. This is chapter 17 and 18 is one of the first examples of peace through strength. He is fortifying his military and his defense in chapter 17. But look at chapter 18. Now Jehoshaphat had riches and honor and abundance and joined affinity with who? Ahab. Who is Ahab? Wicked king of where? Israel, which is which kingdom? The north or the south? Northern, there you go, exactly, bingo. Y'all get a free glass of water, okay? And after certain years, he went down to Ahab. Now this is an ongoing, he's defended himself, so the northern kings, it's not like a kumbaya moment initially, but he strengthened himself, so now he makes peace. And he makes a union with them, okay? Now watch this, what happens is, there is an alliance of resources, okay? In chapter 19, chapter 18, verse 3. And Ahab, king of Israel, said unto Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, wilt thou go with me to Ramoth-Gilead? And he answered him, and I am as thou art, and my people as thy people, and we will be with thee in war. And we've dealt with this battle before, but we're not going to deal with it now. Ahab's battle where he makes some bad choices and winds up on the short end of the stick. But the fact is, he unites with the alliance of the resources. In chapter 19, verse 1, and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, returned to his house in peace. And look what he says in verse 2. And Jehu, the son of Hanani, the seer, the prophet, went to meet him and said unto him, King Jehoshaphat, shouldest thou help the ungodly and love them that... See, that's how God viewed Ahab. And he's saying, why are you budding up and creating this alliance with this wicked person? You're giving your resources to wicked people. And then there is an alliance of relationship. Now go to chapter 21. Okay? Now by the time you get to chapter 21, okay, look at chapter 21, verse 1. Now Jehoshaphat slept with his fathers. And what does it mean to sleep with your fathers? Dead, right. He's right. He's dead. Okay, he's dead as a doornail. So his son's taking over. His son really struggles, but I want you to look at verse 6. And he walked, this is Jehoshaphat's son, in the ways of the kings of Israel. Now, who was the king of Israel at this time? Ahab, right? Okay, so Ahab, he's wickedness, okay? As did the house of Ahab, for he had the daughter of who to wife? Ahab. So in other words, Jehoshaphat united his family, because these guys didn't get married because they saw each other across the room, heard music, and say, "Oh, I love you! Oh, I love you!" We have this feeling deep inside of us, and we're so excited. So we're going to get married. I mean, we're going to go to the chapel and get married and just tell our parents. That's not what's going on here, okay? They didn't go to Las Vegas to get married or something like that, okay? This was a political arrangement. When you were the son of the king, that was a political choice, okay? So he made an alliance of relationship with the wicked king. Now, here's what I'm saying to you, okay? We have to be careful as Christians, okay? We have to be careful as Christians. Let me give you a couple of references to write down, okay? We don't want time to turn tonight, but if you want to, you can do it. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 14 to 18. 2 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 14 and 18. 2 Corinthians 6, 14 and 18. And Romans chapter 16 and verse 17. Romans 16 and 17. We have to be careful what the alliances and the relationships we allow to develop within our lives and how we connect with wicked people, because you connect with people and they're going to affect you. Okay? You get 5 wicked people who are having dinner with and hanging out with 15 godly people, and you would think that the 15 godly people are going to rub off on the 5 ungodly people. But that's not what's going to happen. Now, if the 5 godly people get saved, you become godly, yes, that would be wonderful. But in their lost behavior, okay, what will happen is the 15 godly people will be brought down in their perceptions and their actions. It happens every single time. Okay? That's why, by the way, dating should never be an evangelistic endeavor. You should never date a person, you should never date an unsaved person to try to reach them with the gospel. That's always a bad move, okay? My mother was an example of that. She should have never dated my father. Her first response to my father's approach should have been rejecting it. Okay? You said, well, then you wouldn't be here. Well, I don't go on, but that's true, but that's not the issue. The issue is what is right. Okay? So we have to be careful. I want to challenge you to examine your alliances, okay? Now, you can form an alliance in many different ways. Recently, we did away with a certain streaming service because of their position on certain things. We just said, I can't be aligned with that. It's so perverse, so wicked. And I just said, we're just going to detach from it, okay? You have to make those decisions. Be careful what you align yourself with, okay? Here's the second one, okay? The second mistake he made and challenge is we need to go all the way in our acquisitions to acquisitions, what you acquire. Okay, now here's what I mean by that. Take your Bibles and turn to 1 Kings, okay? This is the reference in 1 Kings where remember the Chronicles is about the southern kingdoms by and large, but the Kings deal with both. 1 Kings chapter 22. Find 1 Kings 22. Let me show you this, okay? 1 Kings 22. His acquisition of certain things was not what it should be. Okay. 1 Kings 22 and verse number 22 and verse I know you never do this, but I put the wrong reference down, okay? Yep. Okay, I cannot find it, so I'm just going to acknowledge that I can't. It's the verse that talks about the king building ships and
22 verse 48.
1 Kings 22.
Verse 48. The ship.
Yes. Thank you very much. I expected it at a different location, right in front of me. Okay. All right. He was sending ships out to sea. Apologize for that. Okay. He made ships to go after gold. You see the verse right here. Okay. Jehoshaphat made ships to go for gold. Let me give you a reference to write down. Deuteronomy 17 and verse 17. Deuteronomy 17 and verse 17. Deuteronomy 17:17 says that neither shall the king multiply wives to himself, turn his heart away from God, neither shall he greatly multiply to himself silver and gold. The kings of Israel were not supposed to go after gold. That's not what God told them, not to do that. There's a reason for it. Because when you become rich, does money become less important to you or more important to you? More. Okay? Somebody, when I tell people, well, the land we need next to us over here, it's like $3 million. Says, well, just call them. Maybe they'll just give it to us. I said, well, they could. But chances are, there's not a high percentage chance it's going to happen unless God supernaturally intervenes. Why? Because people don't usually become owners of $3 million pieces of property. They just keep on the sideline because they give a lot of money away. That's not usually how it works. We have a very casual view of money. Okay? All right. So when we first moved down here, and I was telling people we were down here and the cost of land, they said, well, just find some rich person to give you the money. I said, well, I've been looking, but I haven't found anybody like that yet. We'll give you the land. All right. But the fact is, God says, don't do it, okay? Don't do it. Now watch this, okay? Many times, okay, he built what he did not need to seek after what he should not have. Now, I want to challenge you about this for a minute, okay? Because here's the deal, okay? Here's the deal. Okay? Many times we attempt to acquire things that we do not need. That we do not need. And we go after things that are harmful to us. Maybe not wrong, but harmful. I mentioned this to you before. I see it in youth. I see it in youth and their parents okay that, and they go that direction. The kid wants to go after certain things that aren't wrong to go after, but they go after it either sacrificing their academic training or sacrificing their spiritual lives. And so they wind up saying, well, we're going to go do this and this over here. We want to acquire that, but be careful. You acquire stuff. I've told you this before. I know countless numbers of young people who were spiritually on fire for God from 8 years of age to 12 years of age, in that ballpark, whose spirituality was sacrificed at the altar of a baseball field or a soccer field or a basketball court on a traveling team. Just telling you, I've seen it. I've been around long. I've seen it over and over again. Because they all of a sudden, they go that direction. Okay? Now, it happens with our youth, happens with adults. I know people who have business endeavors far beyond what they need. They want to acquire more and more and more and more. And what happens is they sacrifice their own lives, their family sometimes, their own health sometimes. Okay? Now, I understand it's one thing having 5 jobs to support a wife and 2 kids or whatever, how many kids you have, because you're trying to be a good parent and meet their needs. That's one thing, okay? But sacrificing your family so you can have stuff that you're going to wind up believing the moment you die is not good, okay? We have to be careful with that. I'll just have to give the last one. We have to land the plane. We don't have time to look at it, okay, because of time. Thirdly, all the way in my accommodations, okay? Now, the point here, I'm going to just give you very quickly before you land the plane, is he accommodated stuff in 1 Kings 22, 41 to 46, 1 Kings 22, 41 to 46, that he did not need to have, or he should not have done. First of all, now watch this. He went a long way in the right direction. He went a long way in the right direction. But he did not go all the way in the right direction. What he did was he got rid of a lot of the false worship and wrong behavior, but not all of it. He didn't go all the way. And when you don't go all the way, you leave an avenue for the devil. I've mentioned this story to you before, but I think it's applicable here. I know a guy one time who really struggled. He struggled with addiction. And he went away to a good Christian place and got some good help, and he made just huge gains. It was just, clean, dry, off the stuff for years. For years. For years. And then, one night, one moment, with somebody he should not have been with, doing something he should not have done. It was like those things you get that are covered and sealed in plastic and are very well protected until you get that first little cutout. And then it just unravels with no difficulty at all. You see, when you go a long way in the right direction, but don't go all the way, what happens is you leave that door open for things that are going to take you sideways. So we have to be careful. We need to ask ourselves the question, do I have alliances in my life that need to be removed? Am I acquiring things I really don't need that are sidetracking me from God's will for my life? And am I, in fact, accommodating what may not seem like a huge problem? Now, watch this, but it is a just door big enough in my heart or life for the devil to come in and to work havoc. That's the challenge.